So now to our May program, which is going to be presented by an alumnus of Leadership Tomorrow, Jon Scholes. Jon, I have to tell you that I'm leading with your Leadership Tomorrow credential out of all the impressive listings in your resume, because we have almost 20 Leadership Tomorrow alumni in Seattle 4, plus past Executive Director Jan Levy, and one of the founders of Leadership Tomorrow, past president of this club, Neil McReynolds. You have many friends here that you haven't met yet. In November of 2014, Jon Scholes was named president and CEO of Downtown Seattle Association, following 6 years as the organization's vice president of advocacy and economic development. Jon's passion for taking on big issues was being tested even before the pandemic, as well as his commitment to a healthy, vibrant, and inviting downtown. In addition to being a graduate of Leadership Tomorrow, Jon attended the University of Texas in Austin before graduating from the University of Washington. He lives in downtown Seattle with his wife and twin 9-year-olds. Jon, Seattle 4 Rotarians have been meeting downtown for 110 years. And as far as I know, we do not plan to leave. Please give a warm welcome to Jon Scholes.
Well, thanks so much for the warm introduction, Kim. I really appreciate the invitation, and thanks to Mariah for supporting the logistics and helping me be able to get in front of you all today, virtually at least. It's good to see many friends and old friends that I haven't seen for a while, and some former members of our board at the Downtown Seattle Association. I see Kathy Williams and Mark Weed, and there's probably a few I missed. But it's good to see you all. I hope you all are safe and healthy, and the same for your friends and family and colleagues. I feel fortunate for my health and the health of my family through all of this, and the fact that I'm still employed and leading this organization, and that my kids are getting educated online. I think those three things are pretty key, and through all of this, and if you can satisfy each of those as a parent, you're doing pretty good. I'm coming to you from what was 15 minutes ago was the doctor's office here. My wife has been doing telemedicine from home, and she saw her last patient this morning, and so we've converted this now to the live broadcast center for the Rotary. So we are getting by, and we're one of those families that succumb to the pressure of the kids wanting to get a dog. And so I need to update my bio to include Zoe, our new 3-month-old Labradoodle puppy that joined us about a month ago. My kids have been working on me for a couple of years, and my wife joined the effort as well. And I just, I couldn't take it anymore, and I folded. So Zoe's a new member of our family. But again, good to see you all. And I want to just give my thanks. I see Chief Scoggins on the line, and I know Chief Best was going to join as well, to the first responders in our great city that have been doing everything they can do to keep us all safe while they're mindful of their own health and safety out on the front lines, and to our healthcare workers as well. We're so fortunate to be in a city with such great leaders in the healthcare and first responder space and public health as well, and express a lot of gratitude for their work over the last several months, and the work that's ahead of us over many more months and years to get through this. So what I hope to cover today is just to give you a brief summary of sort of where we were at in downtown Seattle just about 2 months ago. I won't spend a lot of time there, but just to take us back about 2 months, and then discuss where we are now, what the economic impacts have been, and then share some thoughts about our outlook and our thinking about what the future may look like. And I want to leave some time for questions and conversation as well. So I hope to be able to just get through that in about 15, 20 minutes, and then leave a few minutes for questions. And I've got a few slides, not a lot, but a few slides that I'll share. And I'm going to hit the share screen button with all the confidence in the world that these slides are going to come up, and I'm not going to end our call. So let me do this, and I think you can all see them now. Let me see if I can just get this into full screen so it is a little easier to see. So there we go. So again, some of you, I imagine many of you are familiar with the Downtown Seattle Association. For those who aren't, we've been around not as long as you, since 1958. Our mission is to create a healthy, vibrant downtown. We do that by influencing public policy on a wide range of issues that we think are important to the health and vitality of our downtown. And we also provide a number of direct services in the role of a steward of our downtown. So we employ about 130 individuals that are cleaning, managing parks in downtown, providing outreach to those in need, that are on the street, and engaging with visitors and others in the downtown. So a lot of direct services plus a very broad public policy agenda. There's about 2,000 groups like ours around North America, and they really emerged over the last 30, 40 years and have been pretty critical to creating a place where the private sector as well as nonprofits can go to pool their resources, develop a collective vision, and take collective action to help steward and influence the future of our downtowns and ensure that they're healthy and vibrant, and do so with the public sector. So our partnerships with the city and other local governments are really critical. So just about 2 months ago, I had the great privilege of reporting on the state of our downtown at our annual State of Downtown event over at the Hyatt Regency in mid-February. I reported on 10 plus years of really incredible investment in our downtown, of record growth. We added over 100,000 new jobs and had about 330,000 jobs in the downtown as of last February. Unlike many downtowns, we're a downtown where lots of people live. We've had great success in attracting people to live in our downtown, including families and families with kids. We were at the time facing some notable retail vacancies in the retail core, but when you look across the downtown, our retail vacancy and ground floor vacancy was relatively low. We had a boom in our food scene and restaurants. And we'd added an incredible amount of office space over a 10-year period, 20 million square feet of new office space, taking our total to about 69 million. So we were firing on all 8 cylinders. It's not to say we didn't have our challenges. We faced challenges around safety and homelessness and affordability, and many of those are still with us. But we had outperformed many downtowns and urban areas across the US and North America since the Great Recession in both population and job growth, and had a lot to look forward to, and still do, with a record amount of investment in public infrastructure, from an addition to our convention center, $1 billion going into the arena at Seattle Center, and of course, the major transformation of our waterfront. That was then, and here we are today. And I frankly was real surprised in early March just how quickly the sidewalks, the streets, our restaurants, our retailers, our hotel lobbies went quiet. And it really started on that Thursday, I think it was March 5th, the day after the governor made some recommendations to employers for those that could to work from home. And we started to see lots of employers make that decision on March 5th. To advise their employees to do just that. As an employer downtown, we did that with our folks. The folks who could work from home on March 5th began to work from home. And you really could feel it that next day, that Thursday, that Friday, things got very quiet. I was sitting in a restaurant, Zane and Wiley's at 7th and Olive, in the ground floor of our office building across the street from where I live on that Friday night. I think it must have been March 7th. I looked around, I was the only one in there outside of the bartender and a couple servers. And it was striking just how quickly things went quiet. The next day, Kevin and Teresa Davis, the great owners of that location, and the 3 others in downtown, closed all 4 and had to lay off 150 people. So here's where we stand today. And if you can't see those slides, you can move. I just learned this, so I'm just passing on my knowledge. You can move the video over to the left if you need to see those bullets. We've lost about 56,000 jobs since March 1st. And to put that into some perspective, during the Great Recession in downtown Seattle, we lost about 28,000 jobs. So really significant hit to the employment base in downtown. Our colleagues that visit Seattle tell us that conventions are canceled well into the summer, and other conventions that were scheduled for the fall have begun to cancel as well. And we know that there's some large companies, including Microsoft, that have already made decisions to cancel all in-person events at least through June of 2021. So we're seeing some large technology companies, including Microsoft, Facebook, and Salesforce, already signal that they will not be hosting in-person events for the foreseeable future. So we project some long-term impacts to group business and convention business downtown. Those industries that are really anchored in our downtown, nightlife, restaurants, accommodations, art and culture, these are the industries that fuel the vibrancy of our urban places. Those have been some of the hardest hit by the effects of the coronavirus. So in many ways, those industries have effectively been shut down and closed for over a month. The hotels have taken a especially strong impact and hit here. More than 20, I think approaching 30 now, are completely closed in downtown. And occupancy for the ones that are open is in the single digits. So a really devastating impact to our hotel community, our nonprofit arts and cultural organizations, retail, and restaurants. And we've really never seen anything so swift, severe, and widespread as far as the economic impacts. We certainly felt the effects of the Great Recession in downtown Seattle. Washington Mutual collapsing as a company, leaving a lot of empty office space. We saw a number of office buildings that were built on spec that opened just at the wrong time. We saw a number of condo buildings also that opened at the wrong time, but we've never seen this severe of an impact on employment in our downtown over such a short period of time. Again, this has just been about a month and a half or so of these effects, and the Great Recession was several years, and you can see the comparable in the job losses over those two periods. Give me a minute here while I try to advance to the next slide. See, I've already outstripped my technological capabilities here. There we go. So I guess if you move the video, it doesn't let you use your arrow. So lesson learned there. A couple of just highlights on real estate impacts so far. These have been a little bit harder to track, not surprisingly. I think the effects on real estate in the downtown, residential, commercial, hospitality are going to take a little bit longer to play out. But we have seen a reduction in the number of residential units for sale, both in downtown and across the city. Pending sales and listings are down significantly. And then there's some projections around apartment vacancies and office vacancies and rents as well through the end of the year. I have heard from a number of folks smarter than me in the real estate space, in the office space, that they believe that Seattle is better positioned than a number of other markets to weather this economic crisis from an office perspective because of our strong presence of healthcare, biotech, and technology companies. And this crisis we're in likely will dissuade some new projects from being built. So it may in some ways constrain the supply of available office space. There's a lot of debate over what the future holds, and will folks over the long term continue to work from home, and will that decrease the demand for commercial space in our downtowns? The other school of thought is that employers may need more space to provide more social distancing for those folks that are returning to the office. I think it's going to be take some time before we see how all of that plays out, but we are seeing some impacts on real estate currently in downtown. As we look ahead and think about the road to recovery, we've really thought about it in 3 phases, and I think this is sort of a lot of emerging thought around how we think about the next several months and years. We've been thinking about this current phase we're in as the emergency phase. It's all about saving our healthcare system and capacity and ensuring we have enough beds, ventilators, ICU space, PPE, et cetera. We're in this sort of crisis response phase and taking very drastic measures to increase physical, social, distancing. We've been in this phase effectively since the middle of March. It looks like we'll be in this phase for at least another couple of weeks prior to moving into what we're and others have termed sort of the monitor and adapt phase. It is by no means back to normal. It's sort of a new normal, and we believe it will last at least a year, likely much longer. But the phase between the emergency phase we're in and at such a time that we have a vaccine and treatment that's widely available. So that monitor and adapt phase, I think, is going to be challenging. It's going to be a new normal. It's not going to be close to the period and the time we left back in January and February. And I think for downtowns and urban places, it's going to be a slow recovery. In order for us to move forward in any sense of the word and reduce the restrictions that have been placed on physical movement and activities and general operations, the State Department of Health, through their secretary, has laid out some key components that really are foundational to any sort of reopening, and that's widespread testing. That is rapid test results with the testing that is occurring, available PPE for our first responders and healthcare workers, and then a robust contact tracing program, along with physical space to quarantine individuals. So we've been learning from the State Department of Health and Dr. Wiseman, the secretary there, along with our great leadership here in King County, around just the foundation that's necessary from a public health perspective to support any kind of reopening. So it's so critical that our state leaders and local leaders are able to make progress on each of these elements because it's really the basis that we can get back to any kind of economic activity. We have to have widespread testing. We have to have rapid results. We have to have a contact tracing program that's in place so that we know when tests are positive, who those folks have been, have exposed in their social and professional circles. So this is very key. And if we simply return to what we were doing in February and early March without those components in place, we'll be right back to where we started and have to repeat this exercise again. And I don't think anybody wants that, and I don't think our economy can take it. The federal action is something we think is so critical. Our point of view has been the federal government needs to think about this recovery and response as both a marathon and a sprint. The scale of the economic impacts here in Seattle and across the country are such that local and state efforts will not be sufficient in order to help our economy get to the other side and help businesses and nonprofits survive this. So federal action is so key. I think what the feds have done so far is good and they should be commended. But I said in early March, I worried about utilizing the existing tools that we have, the unemployment insurance and SBA loans or grants, and that those systems and offices and personnel would get overwhelmed by the demand. And that's what we've seen over the last couple of months. I really do think we need to embrace some new thinking and new tools in order to provide cash relief to companies so that they can keep folks on their payroll, keep them getting their benefits and particularly health care, and carry them through to the other side. I'm optimistic about some of what's being talked about now in DC and some of the leadership that's being provided by our own Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal, who I think is developed a very creative mechanism that she's calling the Paycheck Guarantee Act that has gotten bipartisan support and economists on both sides of the aisle to weigh in favor, which would really leverage the scale of the IRS to push cash grants through the IRS directly to companies, nonprofits, along with municipalities and state government, so that they can keep their payrolls whole up until a point where unemployment is 7% or less over a 3-month period. So that's some legislation we're following. We were on the phone with her yesterday and have been in communication with her staff over the last couple of weeks to learn more and provide some input. It's evolved pretty significantly since the first draft was developed. And I think the real point here is the action the feds have taken to date is very good. We're going to need additional investment and action to sustain the ability of our companies and nonprofits to get through this. When it comes to downtown Seattle and our urban places across the U.S., I don't think there's a really rosy way to look at this, or that we shouldn't kid ourselves that this is going to be difficult. I think this is going to be a multi-year, long and slow climb out to recovery. I don't see a bounce back. I don't see a V shape in our recovery. This is going to be difficult. The industries that have been hardest hit are those that are most anchored in our downtowns, as I noted earlier. I think we can expect large events not to be happening for the foreseeable future. I think we can expect companies that can continue to have their workforce work remotely, work from home, to continue to advise them to do so. And I think that will be the advice of our state leadership, that for companies that have that ability, they should continue to do that for the foreseeable future, so that we can protect and preserve the public transit system for those employees that can't, that do need to show up to a physical location to perform their job duties. So that's going to be hard on our downtown. And I go back to that first week of March. We saw what it looked like when you started to remove tens of thousands of people from the daytime population Monday through Friday in downtown Seattle. The restaurants, retail establishments, and other small businesses, arts and cultural institutions, the Pike Place Market, those places got quiet real quick. So I think this period where we're going to continue to see a lot of people continue to work from home is going to create a big challenge for many of our other businesses in downtown Seattle. And I think we just have to sort of face up to that reality and that planning horizon and that timeline, and plan for it and prepare for it, and not expect a quick bounce back in July or August or September. I think this is going to be challenging. Some of the things that make downtown so great, and ours in particular, has been this great mix of activities, from conventions and people living there, and leisure travel, and group business and corporate events, and a big employment base. And it's sort of like the game of Jenga. When you have it all set up, each one of those pieces is connected and relies upon the other. And when you start to pull pieces of that out, people working from home, or conventions not happening, or cruise ships not coming, the other elements start to feel it, and it becomes much more fragile. And that's the place we've been in. And I think we're going to be in that fragile state for the next several months, and likely a couple of years. I think we will get through this to the other side. We've withstood a lot as a city and as a downtown in our relatively short history. We've survived the Great Fire. We've survived a previous pandemic. We've survived riots. We've survived previous recession. We've survived Fortune 500 companies collapsing in our downtown. So I do believe we will get through to the other side. And I believe that people will return to our cities, and will return to our downtown. I think people desire to share experiences with others physically. I expect that there'll be a number of us that want to continue working from home in some capacity and have that flexibility. But I think the majority of folks will want to get back to share in art and cultural experiences together, in music, in public spaces. And I think nothing replaces the innovation and collaboration that can be created in a shared workspace. So I think there's been a number of people that have sort of written off cities and suggested that we're all going to continue to kind of work in our pajamas on our couch remotely behind laptops and stream music and not go out to hear live shows, and that we will retreat from our cities. I think we need to take a longer term look at our history, not just in this country, but across the world. And the trends are in our favor, as if you care about urban places and keeping them healthy and vibrant. We have been gravitating toward cities and urban places for hundreds of years. And those places that are much older than we are here in Seattle have withstood a lot. And so optimistic that we can get through the other side here, and also heartened by the resiliency and innovation that so many companies and organizations and leaders in Seattle have demonstrated just over the last 2 months, from Fair Start pivoting and stepping up in new ways to serve hundreds of thousands of meals to those most in need, to Olga Saigon, who runs Pierogi, who hasn't laid off a single employee. She's actually hiring right now, if you can believe it, and has expanded her business and market dramatically, delivering not only pierogies and baked goods that she makes, but delivering goods from the Pike Place Market and other great retailers in downtown throughout our region. So I'm heartened by the ways that people have stepped up, and also the public-private collaboration that I think has been so important to how our region and city has flattened the curve and been so effective in responding to the spread of the virus. We've worked together, we've defined the problem together, we've defined the strategies together. The private sector has stepped up with resources. We've had great leadership from our local and state officials, and we've locked arms and worked shoulder to shoulder to respond to the health impacts. I think we need to take that same spirit and same approach and continue a strong collaborative spirit between the public and private sector as we now turn our attention to economic recovery. And we need to think of the next several years really in that forward thrust type of scale. I think this must be a forward thrust type of effort to recover our region's economy. There's not 1 or 2 strategies that are going to be sufficient. This isn't a 1 or 2 month or 1 year plan. This is a multi-year plan that's necessary. It's going to have many components, and we're going to have to leverage the assets in our region, both the public and private sector assets, and not be duplicative or running into each other. We need to be well coordinated in a multi-sector, multi-scaled recovery plan that really, I think, is of the scale and magnitude of the forward thrust plan of the 1960s and early 70s, which was so important to protecting and enhancing our quality of life. We need a similar effort to protect, enhance, and get back our economy here in the Puget Sound region and in Seattle. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you and all the leadership that each of you are showing. We're all having to pivot and adjust our own organizations and companies throughout all of this, and are going through this, shared human global experience that is so unique. And I think as human beings are going to come out the other side of this, largely because we can stay connected through technology like Zoom and other mechanisms closer than we were at the front end. And I know that it hasn't been the case for previous pandemics. It's sort of driven societies and individuals apart. But I'm hopeful that the empathy that we're all having to show and the vulnerability that we're all having to lead with and expose others to, because we're all in this together, and we're all inviting each other into our kitchens and bedrooms and living rooms, is going to serve us well as just human beings as we get through this together and get on the other side. So happy to entertain any questions if there are any, and if time allows, but again, appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today.
All right, thank you so much, Jon. We do have a few questions here. We have a lot of really good questions, actually. So I will start reading a few of those out to you. The first 2 are kind of similar, so I'm going to put them together. I just lost track of it. Dorothy, I believe that's Dorothy Bullitt, asks, would you please tell us about the COVID-19 era experience for our downtown homeless and addicted folks? And similarly, Virginia McKenzie asks, how well sheltered are homeless people in Seattle, and is it better with all the new shelter options?
Yeah, thanks for those questions. And I think as everyone on this Zoom meeting is aware, I mean, we faced a significant challenge going into this when it comes to homelessness in our city and region. We're very familiar with it as an organization because we manage a team of 9 case managers and mental health professionals that are out on the streets 5 days a week, providing outreach to individuals in need, connecting them to treatment, shelter, housing, and services, as well as employment. And we also operate a second chance jobs program. Our cleaning team is, many of them have lived experience with homelessness. So the challenge has gotten more significant and difficult. Principally the dense shelters that a number of our great nonprofit organizations are running has been the real front and center challenge of just reducing those densities. I serve on the board of the Downtown Emergency Service Center, one of the largest providers of emergency shelter in our city. So first and foremost, it's been about trying to deconcentrate the number of people in the Morrison down at 3rd and James and some of their other facilities. They moved quickly with the county to stand up some new facilities, a Red Lion in Renton and some others. So that has been the first and foremost, is how do we create more capacity? And then if you've been on the streets of downtown lately, some of the few people you see are the folks you saw back in February that are dealing with addiction and mental health issues, some that are committing crimes, that are breaking into buildings, that are dealing with substance use disorders. That is still very much present in our downtown, and it has become more difficult and complicated. The policies of the King County Jail to limit bookings and of misdemeanors has layered on a whole new level of complexity here. So I think we have an opportunity to continue with some of the good steps that have been taken between the county, city, and some of the nonprofit housing providers to respond with a sense of urgency and to try new things and to treat this as a crisis, which it's been for many, many years in our city, and to continue those efforts. We need to stand up more space for people that are outside. And we can't accept that tent encampments across our sidewalks in places like the Ballard Commons, where we saw a hepatitis A outbreak, are the best we can do. Those have huge impacts on the neighborhood, on businesses that are going to be trying to get back on their feet, on people's ability to enjoy their neighborhood, and on the people in those situations. So I think we need to move with a great sense of urgency to tackle this issue, because the quality of our public spaces, of our downtown, of our neighborhood business districts, we want them to be clean, safe, welcoming, and inviting. And I think those basics are going to be really key to any kind of recovery. We need our downtown to be safe and welcoming for everybody as we try to get the economy back. So the challenge has gotten more complex, but my hope is we've developed some new methods and we've tried some new things and we've moved quickly over the last month and a half, and credit to those folks who've done that. We need to continue that and tackle this problem with a greater sense of urgency than where we were before we got into this.
All right, we are running short on time, but we'll get at least one more question.
And I'll try to be a little briefer in my response.
Okay, quick response. Question from Ken Grant. He's curious if crime in downtown is down over the last 2 months.
Certain crimes are. Commercial burglaries are up. That's one we have our eye on, and we've been tracking those directly, in touch with the Seattle Police Department regularly. We've been talking to other neighborhood business districts who are seeing similar issues. It's not a surprise, really. We had a large population of folks that were dealing with substance use issues in February. They're still dealing with those issues today. They fed a lot of their habits through shoplifting and break-ins to sell goods on the street to buy more drugs. And so we've seen a significant increase there. A number of property owners and businesses have boarded up their windows to help protect their property. We've started a program to put murals and connect artists to some of those property owners, just to improve the physical appearance of those spaces and hopefully deter more crime and vandalism. We'll have 6 murals go up starting today, and are raising money throughout the community to put more up. So that's one bright spot, but we have seen an uptick in commercial burglary downtown.
All right, thanks so much. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have today. So I'm going to turn it back over to Kim, but thank you again for being here and for answering our questions.
Appreciate the opportunity and hope you all continue to stay safe and healthy.
Thank you, Mariah, and thank you, John, for this much anticipated update on the health of downtown and for sharing signs of hope. We appreciate that. Please join us next week when we will hear from Julie Stein of the Burke Museum, who will tell us about the new Burke, featuring spaces that blur traditional lines of front of the house and back of the house to establish a new kind of museum and a new way to experience our world. Please join us to welcome Julie on May 13th.